I'm very nervous today, and I didn't put in my talk for some reason. But a few months ago, I was at one of these conferences with a friend of mine, and we were joking that I would bring boxed copies of Camping to sell at RubyConf, and I did. So you can support camping by buying it, even though you can get it for free. We've got an SD card with a custom sticker and a coloring book and crayons. So, well, hello. How is everybody? My name is Karl Oscar Weber the First, but you can call me Cal. I'm here to talk about camping. It is the best MVC style micro web framework written in Ruby. Officially. Yes, it's true. It is the bestest. But first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about me. This is me. I am a dad. I love the graffiti. I love art, design, and programming. Graphic design is my passion. I love my bike. I ride it every day. You know, when I'm not like hurt in the back or something. I also run a small design and development studio named Capsule, which is mildly successful. And I have been programming for about 13 years, doing a lot of different things, front end, back end, iOS stuff. I've worked with a lot of different languages, which has given me a kind of a unique perspective. Definitely, if you want to be successful, focus. That's one thing. But that has also provided a perspective on a lot of different ways of organizing, building, and interpreting your programs. I've also been working on a programming language named Kona, which is meant to be a replacement for JavaScript. Very small project, very small. And I won't talk about it today. But I love Ruby the most. So anyways, what is camping? Camping is intense. Some of y'all have heard this joke before. I won't stop saying it. It is a model view controller-based micro framework, which is very small. It's written by the illustrious and mysterious Y the Lucky Stiff. Is anyone here familiar with Y? Yes, we all live in the shadow of the greatness of Y. He wrote some great stuff, lots and lots of very, I think, formative and important open source projects that really shaped the early days of Ruby and the culture and community around it. I never met him personally. I had to learn about him through archived websites and hidden JPEGs and PDFs that are, lost to time. But he's fantastic. And he made us all thirsty for some chunky bacon. It is written in legend that Y wrote the first version of camping with one hand while staying up late, typing with his right hand and playing a laser theremin with his left. The music and code was eloquent. He vanished from the internet and the world, leaving behind nothing but mystery and suspense. And Y's projects were adopted. Many of his projects were adopted by people in the community. There was a great outreach and effort to make sure that everything he left behind was maintained. Over time, many of these fell into disrepair. Some of them were continued. Camping was one of those projects. It received a little bit of interest and work over time and improvements. And now I can say that camping has 33 contributors and counting, which is fantastic. Yesterday, we added a new contributor, Mike Dalton. I don't know if you're here. Mike? He's not. But he's the latest contributor, so he's here in my heart. The last major changes to camping before I discovered it and tried to bring it back was in 2014, over 10 years ago. And it sat there until I had the urge and desire to look for something a little bit new. Something small and simple, all in one file. I wanted to make something, I wanted something to use to make my websites that was simpler, easier to parse and to understand. I had a lot of difficulty, well, not a lot of difficulty, but it grates on you to have to jump between too many files sometimes when you just want to like throw something small out there. So I wanted something that I could clearly review quickly and accurately. So I found camping. I didn't find much until I found it. So let's talk about MVC really quick. Camping is an MVC framework, but what does that mean? We know that, well, I hope that we're all kind of familiar with the differences between data, interface, and logic. And that's more or less what MVC does. It separates an application into distinct parts. But when we talk about MVC frameworks, it's not really the original MVC that we talk about. Please see Colin's excellent blog post about this, colin.donald.com. MVC isn't MVC. It's more like, in our context, website orchestration. What we're really doing is sending HTML and CSS and other files to the browser, but fancy. And we call this model view controller. Our models handle our data, our views present a user interface, and our controllers orchestrate the effects of our actions. So, this is camping. It is a bit silly, which mirrors the sentiments of its creator. Why? It's mostly a single file. This file is a minified sort of Ruby that we put into a little file called camping.rb. And there's no script to minify this. It's all done by hand. As Mike can attest, it's a little bit silly. It's about 5,181 bytes. Although Mike yesterday was able to shave off 20 of those bytes, was very important engineering work. It's incredibly compact code that gives you a full framework and runs on madness. To get camping running, you should go camping. So you give camping a namespace like blog, and camping goes blog. This copies camping source code, renaming its namespace to your app's name, then evals it inline, which is awesome. This is the best way, officially. So what does camping look like? This is a camping app, and I hope you can read this in like 20 seconds. As you can see, it's all one file, which is fantastic and funny. You have models, views, controllers. You even have CSS in here. Camping apps are usually small and create a locality that makes finding all the bits and bobs of your application easy. It's all right there. Camping's view components are built around a small language called Markup or MAB. MAB lets you write your tags and your markup like it's Ruby, which is fantastic. A modern version of MAB would be Flex, which is made by Joel Draper, and it's fantastic. We hope to add Flex to camping soon. Or you can use ERB, which is familiar. Camping also lets you use regular ERB, HTML, or other templates through an interface called Tilt. Tilt is like a light wrapper around basically every templating language Ruby has. And in order to add your ERB to camping, you just add the file. Camping will automatically parse it and add it to the list of files that are used. Camping also lets you add inline files. Who here is familiar with the underscore, underscore, end, underscore? So a few of you. When I saw this, I thought it was crazy. Ruby has this facility that lets you add data to the end of files. Once it's parsed, everything after end becomes data, and you reference it with data. Camping doesn't do that. Camping will read the file until end, and then read everything after that. It will split it based on the file names preceded by the double @ symbol, and then serve those as rack files. These files are cached by camping as they're accessed, just like normal views or files. So what about routes? Well, in camping, the controllers are the routes. Camping's controller class introduces a method named R that accepts a route or series of routes, then generates a controller class that responds to those routes, which is very cool. Camping also lets you use a camel case syntax to name your route classes or your controllers. And then it kind of guesses what your route should be. In this case, welcome to my site will let you see that page by going to welcome/to/my/site. It's also clever where if you add like a capital N or a capital X, it will add those as parameter pieces in your route. When you reach a camping route, it references or responds to your action through methods. Now, usually in other frameworks, those methods would be the actual routes, or you would have some sort of routing table. But in camping, it's the actual HTTP methods that are referenced. So HTTP GET is sent to GET. HTTP POST is sent to your POST method, and etc. Camping also has a small facility called filters. It lets you have before and after filters for common actions and controllers in your camping app. It's incredibly small camping gear that was written by a few camping contributors early on. Camping setup of its components mirrors Ruby's own namespacing practices. So things kind of appear and are placed where you expect them to be. Sometimes folks want to have, more lightweight type of routes, similar to Sinatra. So we created camping gear called Nancy to achieve this. If anyone hears in on the joke, Nancy Sinatra is Frank Sinatra's daughter. So what about models? Camping also has models. Camping wraps the ORM built into the SQL gem. It's used to have direct support for active record, but I thought that we could do a little bit better. Active record, in the way that it was implemented, whenever you booted camping, it would automatically run every migration. And I thought it would be a little better, have something a little bit more robust, less automatic. And this is what it looks like. I ripped out the default code to replace it with some other camping gear named Van, which is a camping van. This is what it looks like. It's not ready yet. It's close. But for reals, it's some camping gear that adds command line helpers to make migrations, execute migrations, connect to various types of database, etc., all through the SQL gem. It's not ready yet, but these are the planned features. And the SQL gem is fantastic, and primarily the work of Jeremy Evans, who's here. He also works on the fastest Ruby web framework, which is Rhoda, and is speaking next. And I recommend everyone stay to listen to him. So the models are just a namespace. You can put anything there. It's an empty vessel for adding your own logic. Because it's just a namespace, you can add whatever you want. But what about plugins? Let's say you wanted to do more. Camping also has support for plugins that modify the methods that camping has. We call this camping gear. To add camping gear to your app, you pack it. It's as easy as adding a rack app to your app. This is the simple implementation of it. It's just include with a little bit of plumbing shaped around it. We also assume that your camping gear has a setup method that passes additional parameters and any block passed to the pack method. In your camping gear, you could optionally add a Ruby method called included, which is a hook. This allows you to extend camping with class methods or any other part of camping that internally can be overwritten. This is based off of Cuba's another web framework, way of adding plugins, which, fun fact, Rhoda is based off of Cuba. These are all of camping's features. You got to read it in like 5 seconds. It offers everything you expect from an MVC framework, along with some extras like settings and data coming from KDL and cascade reopening. Cascade reopening is this idea where you can redefine controllers deeper on in your app hierarchy by placing them in the apps directory. Eventually, you'll be able to include a gem with a camping app directly, and you'll be able to overwrite those parts in your own app and make it nice and clean. Okay, so how does camping work? With madness and cheating. So camping core is one minified file, but to be smart-ish, we keep another file around camping unabridged. It's like, I don't know, like 10 times bigger. It's pretty big. Has a lot of comments, and it gives context to all the code in camping. So camping and camping unabridged have to be in sync, synchronized at all time. Camping is only 5,000 bytes, but it's a lot of magic. But anyways, let's dive into how camping works, which is fantastic. To start, camping reopens object to define a new method, metadef, a shortcut to add class methods, which is used in camping a few times. This saves a few bytes over time. Fun fact, putting a backslash that doesn't escape anything into a string causes it to be ignored. When we start camping, we start by cheating a little to keep our character count down and define some constants. C refers to camping itself. S refers to this file. It's read and stored here for use later. We then redefine hash with some more shortcuts as H, which saves a lot of bytes. We immediately use this in our cookies class. To keep character count down, we assign reused variables, while they are being passed to methods like here in the set method. J, the attribute key, is being set, then reused on the next line to set the key. The next method defines a shortcut and some error checking for set. We then alias this on above to save character count later. Camping has helpers. They are in the helpers class. Predictably, it's pretty slick. The first helper is the R method. It lets you build a URL from a controller constant and some parameters. Here, Y assigns two variables on the same line, saving characters and using the fantastic grep method to find the hashes from the G splat. On the next line, we subtract H from G. H is any hash we found, and G is everything else, all in 4 characters. Ruby is great. On the next line, we start wrapping some route-making operations, first by hunting for a matching route in this controller. It's in the find block that we do our work. Find is aptly named as we want to find a route. We have 2 checks. First, to match the size of a route to what we're searching for. Next, we match this regular expression. The caret is the beginning of the line, and is the end of the line. The pound curly brace X inserts the route we're looking for. And the backslash / question mark is a bit of error prevention to match a trailing slash or not. Then we reassign X, and it's evaluated in this grouping, which scans X, our URL path, with an escaped version of a parameter passed to G. Notice the use of capital U.escape. That's from rack. Earlier, we copied rack utils into U to save some characters. Inject provides a variable at each iteration in our block, in our case, x, letting us modify it as we go along. In this case, we're replacing x with the parameters we supplied to the R method, escaping them and then unescaping them. At the end, we wrap our logic with a ternary. Any question mark ensures that anything truthy is there. If so, then we add an HTML query parameter to the end of our route. Otherwise, we just return the route we made. If we look back a few lines, u is assigned from our find block and then immediately used in the if statement to possibly break. I love trailing ifs. There, you now made a route in a controller using the R method with error checking and query strings applied by an optional hash. You want to see the URL method? It doesn't have any parens. First, we use R. It does a lot of work for us in this case. Then we reuse the very descriptive / method, which somehow works here on line 251, but I do not know why. Okay, but just look at it. Finally, we return a URL object built from our path, C. How do we make a camping app? It goes camping. And this is camping goes. It accepts a constant name, the name of your app. We do some bookkeeping to keep track of where this app is going from. And then we replace the name camping in the contents of this file, camping.rb, as stored in the S variable, and eval it in the context of G, which is the top level binding by default. On the same line, we add this to our apps array and have it in a variable named A. Next, we read the file we went camping in and look for views and pseudo files found after the __ end, like you do. :_t is the key for views and files in camping app. We set this to whatever we get in the above line. And next, we do some parental setup. This is used by camping internally and is important. We call the configure method provided by the default camping gear. This sets settings sequentially. And we have a special configure method that isn't actually in camping. It's provided by camping gear named Cuddly, which adds KDL setting support to camping. Next, we're going to briefly look at the camping server. Camping server inherits from rackup server, which means we're cheating some more. Work that was done like 14 years ago, mostly, and continued into today. And I swear the upstream dependency has barely changed in 14 years, but only got better. Minimal changes were required to get it running with the latest version because Ruby and its libraries are incredibly stable, which is awesome. Camping service has a middleware and the reloader, which runs Zeitwerk. The loader can't just straight up use Zeitwerk without managing some of what's loaded because of some of the other features that we have. It loads kindling, which are like initializers, then triggers the reloader and saves it to a little helper variable. There's more going on in camping server that is kind of normal and regular. It inherits from rackup server, so it's pretty standard stuff and saves me a lot of time. The core of the dispatcher is the call method. It does more than this, but essentially we check each camping app loaded for a path that matches the requested path and then just call it. Very simple. And all this is possible because Ruby is OP. It enables a greater class of productivity and flexibility. Without it, camping could not be possible or be so compact while still being legible. Parens at the end of methods calls are optional. This makes private method calls feel like built-in language constructs. Creating a rich API with these methods means hiding complexity. Ruby's include, extend, and block passing syntax make extensions a first-class feature. That makes frameworks easy to build and powerful through introspection. Ruby's power for making frameworks extends beyond language semantics, but through community-adopted interface contracts, like Rack. That's what I'm talking about. And the wonderful people that maintain and shepherd Rack, including Jeremy, whose talk's next, which y'all stay for. Rack was adopted early in Ruby's rise, making it even very old Ruby that adopted the paradigm compatible with Ruby code today, like camping. Rack interface contract simplicity echoes Unix text interface simplicity, and Rack API compatibility kicks ass. Ruby's built-in library of expressive methods to iterate and enumerate over lists and dictionaries make everything so nice. Global regex helpers are great too, and can make for compact and tight code. Not that it is a goal, but it's not a goal in camping, except in camping.rb, because it's funny. and more. Why resurrect camping? The answer is resilience against disease, community disease. I decided to work on camping in response to my disgust with the actions and political and social views of some very few well-known Ruby peoples. Like explicitly, that's the reason. Supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. Like explicitly, camping supports that. Every action is political and consequential, whether you decide it is or not. Politics is what happens when people come together and decide how to use their collective power. Saying there's no politics here is a political act to explicitly support whoever has the advantage or privilege in a society or group. Life is going to get real tough for people soon. I don't know if you all have heard, but exclusive and hateful rhetoric is on the rise. Accepting any of that in our communities will allow it to spread. Every so-called non-standard, weird person will be erased from our society if we don't choose to stand up for them, our neighbors, our friends, our spouses. In every venue, forum, and community we find ourselves in, if we can't dictate the basic standards of a community to be inclusive, then we need to build alternative communities and build alternative power to include and protect the most vulnerable. Anyways, so why work on camping? Why work on the framework? Because I love Ruby, and the perception that the Ruby community is not welcome or misogynistic or prejudiced hurts the long-term growth and viability of Ruby. Perceptions shape reality. If people think things are one way, even if it's mostly not like that, they'll still think it. If we're almost all super nice, but they think we're jerks, that's bad. But we're not. Everyone here is super nice. Matt is nice, and so we are nice. It's a great motto. But there are some complaints, and complaints are good. This is very important. Like, if you don't like something, complain. Complaints are good because it means you hope with your voice someone will hear your complaint and improve things. But also, complain and do something. Make things better. Build the world you want to live in. I decided to build to make something better. We should make things better. This is, I think, that what we should do, and I want to do that. I'm very grateful that Magnus, and many others made something fun and beautiful and useful that I can work on. Camping is silly, and we need more of that. Thank you, Mats. I'm very grateful that Mats made Ruby because it makes me happy and pays my rent. Thank you.